I just want to open with a kwento ng konti, no, from a personal point of view. I have a grandmother, and it's always about, she lived up to the ripe old age of 102. Okay, she lived up to 102, and the one thing that struck me the most was, of course, she was eating well. She didn't exercise like, barbells and all, no, but she was very active. She'd have her amigas and going around. And I think that was a big factor also, the social impact. Nothing ever fazed her. Nothing scared her. So she was never sad about anything. Even when there's a death in the family, she'd always just turn to God and be good about it. And she just left it up to God. She never was bothered by problems. And she's been, she had a lot of, so it's a lot of big factors about mental health also and your social aspect. So, but that's veering away from what we're going to talk about. We're not going to talk about mental health today, okay? We'll talk about nutrition, which is my passion, okay? And how do we know that we are eating well, okay? Jimmy talked about a lot about nutrition and about malnutrition. And when we look at pictures like this is definitely a picture of malnutrition, diba? This is the classic case of malnutrition. Somebody na parang walang laman, very thin skin and bones. And I do see patients this way. They come to the hospital with a very, very low BMI. Do you understand what BMI is? Body mass index. And it's very, very low, close to the point wherein body mass index is no longer compatible with life. And yet we have to try to manage them. But on the other end of the spectrum, nowadays, we now know that malnutrition is not just undernutrition, but it's also overnutrition. Proud na proud pa sila, di ba? Tingnan mo yung isa, nakahawak pa sa tiyan ng isa, di ba? But what we want to do is not to be either of the two. What we want to be is in the middle ground, okay? But it goes beyond BMI, and we'll talk about that later on. Jimmy spoke very expertly and extensively about the biological changes that come with aging. With just looking at your family members who are of age already, what's the first thing that you think about? Oral cavity in the mouth. What are the changes that happen that can affect eating? Dentures, diba? Or they're not able to produce enough saliva. Yung laway. So the mouth is very dry, and they have greater tendency to have mouth sores. They don't have thirst. When you get older, hindi mo na nalalaman na you're thirsty. So that's why we do get a lot of aging patients who are dehydrated in the ER, and that's the only reason why they're there. It's because they lack the hydration, water lang. Another thing is Jimmy spoke expertly about the GI tract, the stomach, the intestinal tract, yung gut ninyo. And it talks about also that there's a change. Most of the elderly, if you notice, dati nakakakain sila ng usual food, vegetables, ng marami. Ngayon, nagka-gas sila. Diba? They get gassy as they get older. They get bloated. And then so because of that, they end up eating less, because they're not able to digest the food properly. Talk about hepatic or liver and renal problems. They're not able to process nutrients and even medications properly because of under-functioning of these because of aging, and so forth and so on. I don't want to go into much detail there. There's a mnemonic why old people lose a lot of weight. And this is what we call meals on wheels. And we'll see that it's not just about a decline in intake. Ayaw lang nilang kumain. It's not that. It's more complex. Appetite is actually a very complex process. The ability to eat. Anorexia also. Medications. If you notice, as you get older, diba, you have more medications now because you have more diseases, you're given more medications. Tapos pa, magsa-supplement ka with a lot of vitamins and minerals which actually take up much of your stomach space. So you end up eating less. You have emotional impact, and that's what I was mentioning. A lot of our patients who are elderly actually don't eat because they are depressed. And that can be coming with because of, Jimmy mentioned about that, mental health is also important. And so forth and so on, including the concept of poverty. Kung wala kang pera, talagang wala kang pagkain, di ba? Bottom line. Okay? So we don't want that to happen. Another thing I want to highlight, tendency of the older people, or as we get older, we get to go to highly restrictive diets. The patient is hypertensive, our parents are hypertensive, or our parents have diabetes, so we're not going to allow them to eat any salt. We're going to take out all the cholesterol in the diet. What's left for them to eat? So they end up with an extremely restricted diet, which will now be less. So they end up being malnourished in the long run. I don't know if you've heard of the term frailty. When we talk about geriatric medicine, we always talk about frailty. And frailty, if you understand the term frail means weak, you're vulnerable to damage, and all that. So it's a general terminology, but really it's a vicious cycle. You have older people who are undernourished, hindi sila nakakain ng mahusay, and then they become sarcopenic. Jimmy already mentioned about sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass, and I will explain that a little bit further. Sarcopenia, and as you get sarcopenic, you're not able to do your activities of daily living. You're not able to walk very well, so you end up losing your appetite, and you go back to chronic, and it just spiraling downward, okay? So what we want to try to do today, and that's what we're going to try to teach you what to do at home, on a community level, is to break that cycle, and we want to bring you back up to normal health. So we have sarcopenia, weight loss, undernutrition, decreased strength. Of course, when you have no more muscle, how are you going to be able to stand up? How are you going to be able to move? Okay? Decreased balance, low physical activity, cognitive, the thinking processes also start to dwindle. So you see how important muscle mass is. And that's actually, as a nutrition person, one of the most important things that we want to maintain is not just weight. It's not the number on the scale. It is the amount of muscle mass, muscle strength that we want to maintain, okay? Now, sarcopenia, as mentioned by Jimmy a while back, is a syndrome characterized by progressive and generalized losses in your skeletal muscle. Skeletal is the one that's attached to your skeleton, okay? Skeletal. Okay? If you go to international conferences, the foreigners, they don't say skeletal muscle, they say skeletal muscle. So all of us will now start using the word skeletal muscle. I don't know why they use it. I don't even know if that's correct, but that's what they use. Okay, so because of the changes in the amount of mass and the strength of that, can you just imagine the impact on your ability to do regular work? So because you're not able to walk, you're not able to brush your teeth, you're not able to go to the grocery to buy your food on your own kasi wala kang muscle mass, di ba? You've seen that as one gets older. What happens to your QOL stands for quality of life. And I'm so happy Jimmy mentioned that a while back. That when we talk about aging, it's not just the number on the on the calendar. It's also about being physically active, being mentally active. So what's the point of living so long, up to the age of 100, but you're just sitting, you can't do anything. So quality of life, even in terms of cancer care, for example, I do deal with a lot of cancer patients as well. We don't only talk about survival rates, increase in survivability, but we want to talk about functionality also. Okay, so two of those things. Now, one of the things, sarcopenia comes in two forms, and some people may have only one, or the others may be a combination of all of these. You have primary sarcopenia, and Jimmy mentioned that as you get older, walang ligtas. I'm so sorry. All of us will end up with less muscle mass. That is part of normal aging. Okay, you will have primary sarcopenia. You will get that. Number two is if you have certain conditions, secondary conditions. One of them is if you are sedentary. Ilan kayo ang sedentary? Hindi kayo gumagalaw masyado. Okay? You can